The year is 1998 and the gaming world is about to change forever. A small studio called Valve releases a game built inside a heavily modded Quake engine. No cutscenes, no flashy cinematics, just a seamless story told entirely through gameplay. And that game was Half-Life. And from that moment on, nothing in gaming was ever the same. Because Half-Life isn't just a game. It's a prophecy, a religion, a meme, a tech demo, and for more than 2 decades, it's been an inside joke between Valve and the rest of humanity. It's the story of a silent scientist with a PhD in theoretical physics who somehow becomes Earth's only hope by smashing aliens in the face with a crowbar. And at the same time, it's the story of Valve, one of the strangest, most brilliant companies in gaming history. A company that accidentally built a masterpiece. They somehow lost control of time itself, but then somehow made millions by doing absolutely nothing for over 15 years. Even if you've never played it, by the end of this video, you'll understand why Half-Life is the blueprint for modern gaming. Picture it, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, alarms blaring, red sirens spinning in your peripheral vision. You're sprinting through a collapsing underground research facility, clutching a crowbar while headcrabs launch at your face and soldiers shoot to kill. This isn't just chaos. This is science fiction in the purest form, and this is Half-Life. And in the strangest twist of all, it's a series that redefined storytelling in games, gave birth to modern mod culture, pioneered digital distribution with Steam, and in the strangest twist of all, became a cautionary tale of what happens when a studio gets too rich, too successful to ever finish the story it started. So buckle up. I'm about to break down the entire history of Half-Life from 1998 to today. No skips, no mercy. And yes, we're going to talk about Half-Life 3, sort of. Let's rewind to the mid-90s. Back then, Valve wasn't the gaming giant we think of today. It was just 2 ex-Microsoft guys, Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington, sitting on a pile of Microsoft stock money and betting it all on one idea. They weren't out to simply compete with Quake, but they wanted to push shooters into completely new territory. So they licensed the Quake engine, tore it down piece by piece like a Lego set, and then rebuilt it into something new. Their vision was pretty bold. There were no constant cutscenes interrupting the flow, as well as no glowing arrows telling you where to go. It was just a world you were dropped into, where the story unfolded around you and the action never let up. It was messy and chaotic, but it was chaos with a PhD in theoretical physics. Here's the kicker though. The first version of Half-Life was pretty terrible. Testers hated it. So Valve scrapped the entire thing and quietly started over from scratch. There were no excuses, no announcement, just back to square one. That move was the first glimpse of what would define Valve's reputation. Now, they would miss deadlines, miss them again, and miss them so badly it eventually became part of their mythology. Then came 1998. Half-Life officially launched. And it didn't just change shooters, it rewired the brains of everyone who touched it. From the second you boarded that painfully slow tram in the Black Mesa research facility, you knew this was different. It didn't feel like a level, it felt like a real place. A gray, fluorescent lit corporate nightmare where scientists argued over microwaves and paperwork. And then everything went to hell. That was the Resonance Cascade, science's official version of oops. Aliens pouring out of the interdimensional rifts, elevators collapsing into fire, alarms screaming down the hallways, and you? No weapon, no backup. Nothing but a crowbar and the dawning realization of, why did I even come to work today? That crowbar became the star of the show. You smashed crates with it, knocked barnacles off ceilings, tapped walls in terror looking for trip mines, and occasionally managed to kill yourself falling 3 feet while holding it. It truly was your best friend, and your only lifeline, and your worst decision-making tool rolled into one. And then there was Gordon Freeman, a man who said nothing, not even a grunt, not a let's go, not a single word. Somehow that silence made him feel more real. He wasn't an action hero, he was just a quiet nerd with a beard, a PhD, and a zero combat training, who by pure accident became humanity's last hope. The kind of guy who should have been fixing printers and not swinging crowbars at aliens. Black Mesa itself tied it all together. You weren't hopping through disconnected maps. You were literally crawling through vents and retracing your steps into areas you had seen earlier and only now filled with corpses and chaos. The scientists you rescued were dead minutes later. Soldiers stormed in and instead of helping, their orders were to erase the problem, which meant killing everything that moved, including you. Here's where Valve's genius really showed. They didn't just make a game, they created a platform, a playground, and they handed the keys over to the players. The Half-Life modding scene exploded. Horror mods, alien mods, mods where you played as a scientist, even joke mods that barely worked.
Bruh, chill.
Some were brilliant, some were nonsense, but people downloaded them all anyway. And then two guys made Counter-Strike, a scrappy little mod where terrorists planted bombs and counter-terrorists tried to stop them. The hitboxes were pretty broken and the weapons were unbalanced and the interface looks duct taped together. It was perfect. Now, everyone had that one friend who bought nothing but flashbangs and blinded the entire team, and everyone got headshotted by a kid named 420XX Sniper God XX69. But people kept playing because the game was absolute magic. Valve noticed, and in classic fashion, they swooped in, brought the mod, hired the creators, and polished it up, as well as turning it into a full release. That single move set the tone for the next 2 decades. Valve did not just make games. They built the box, gave players the tools to tinker inside it, and when someone struck gold, they bought it and made it their own. So Half-Life wasn't just another shooter. It was a survival horror, a sandbox. It was the launchpad of an entire modding empire. It proved you didn't need cutscenes to tell a story. That silence could be more powerful than dialogue. And that sometimes is the most legendary weapon in gaming history. Literally a rusty crowbar in a locked closet. And the wildest part is that this was only the beginning, and the teleportation nightmares were still yet to come.
Last one alive, lock the door!
Half-Life did not just win Game of the Year, it won Game of the Future, because what came next was not just praise from critics, it was a cultural detonation. Players weren't just finishing the campaign and moving on, they were tearing the game apart, modding it, rebuilding it, and reshaping it into things Valve themselves could have never predicted. For a while, Half-Life stopped feeling like a single game, and started feeling like an entire genre, and Valve loved it. They did not just allow it, in fact, they fueled it. If your mod was good enough, Valve would actually swoop in, hire you, and give you an audit and tell you to keep going. This is exactly how Team Fortress went from being a Quake mod in 1996 to Team Fortress Classic in 1999. It was rebuilt inside the Half-Life engine after Valve poached Robin Walker and John Cook. That was the start of a pattern. Half-Life then became the farm system for an entire wave of mods that would evolve into full-blown games. The unwritten rule was simple. If you were crazy enough, stubborn enough, or talented enough to actually finish something, Valve might find you. Modding was no longer just a hobby. It started to be a career pipeline, and the Gold Source engine was your portfolio. Counter-Strike proved it. Two guys hacked together a tactical shooter with terrorists and counter-terrorists. At the time, the balance was broken, and the graphics were pretty rough, and the menus looked like they had been drawn with crayons. But it really exploded. Servers filled up, LAN cafes turned into battlegrounds, and suddenly Half-Life was no longer just a single-player shooter. It was a machine that printed legends. It was like the Marvel Cinematic Universe of PC gaming. Instead of billion-dollar budgets, it was powered by teenagers on Rebel and a dial-up internet. But while the community was exploding, Valve had a bigger problem: retail. CDs, jewel cases, Walmart shelves, publishers taking massive cuts. Valve hated it. They really wanted control. So they built their own solution. A launcher, a platform, a store. Something that could rule them all. They called it Steam. If you were around in 2003, you remember how bad it was. Steam was so buggy, laggy, and kinda ugly. Servers crashed constantly, updates broke everything, and the interface looked like it had been designed in Microsoft Excel. And to make it worse, it was mandatory. If you wanted to play Half-Life 2, you had to install Steam. People were actually furious, and even forums exploded. Reviewers called it spyware, and some players swore off Valve forever. Valve did not care. They weren't playing for 2003. They were playing for 2023. They already knew physical discs were going extinct. They were quietly laying down the railroad for the future of PC gaming while everyone else was still arguing in GameStop. And then came the leak. In 2003, with Half-Life 2 still in development, a German hacker broke into Valve servers and stole everything. The engine, the source code, and even a playable build. It was one of the biggest hacks in gaming history, and Gabe Newell himself posted on forums begging the community to help track down the guy. Eventually, the hacker was caught, and the story morphed into gaming legend. Rumors even floated that Valve offered him a job. Now, the truth is, well, let's just say the FBI was not in a hiring mood. But here's the kicker, the leak was not why Half-Life was delayed. The game simply was not ready. Classic Valve. Promise the world, miss the deadline, vanish for months, and somehow keep everyone excited anyway. So fans waited and waited. They played Counter-Strike until their eyes bled, even spamming forums with theories. They built entire conspiracy boards out of elite concept art. The hype around Half-Life 2 became a cultural event before the game even existed. And then in 2004, 7 years after the original, it finally happened. Half-Life 2 released, and it did not just meet the hype, it rewrote the rules. Half-Life 2 was not a sequel. Honestly, it was a revolution. From the moment in City 17, you felt the weight of it. The air was heavy, guards tracked your every move, propaganda screens barked Combine slogans, and the streets told stories without dialogue. This was not a stage or a level. It was a world. Gordon Freeman had somehow become humanity's one-man resistance, and you were living inside a dystopian police state. But the real magic was physics. Valve unveiled the Source engine and flexed harder than anyone in the industry. The objects had weight, glass shattered differently every time, wood splintered in unique ways. Water rippled like actual water. At this time, most players did not know they cared about realism until Valve showed them what it looked like. And then came the gravity gun. This was not just a weapon. It was a philosophy. Valve asked the question, what if the entire environment was a toy? With it, you could fling saw blades like ninja stars, stack boxes into staircases, or turn random junk into projectiles. Ravenholm became its playground. The whole chapter was a physics gauntlet where survival meant turning the world itself into your arsenal. Some players even beat the level without firing a bullet, improvising with buzzsaws, barrels, as well as propane tanks. It was pretty much horror, slapstick, and engineering class rolled into one. The gravity gun truly changed gaming. After Half-Life, physics were no longer a gimmick. Every major game wanted ragdolls, destructible worlds, and some excuse to throw a barrel at an enemy. Valve had definitely raised the bar, and the rest of the industry scrambled to catch up. Half-Life 2 also pushed storytelling forward. Alyx Vance was not a sidekick. She was a person players cared about. The Combine were not faceless goons. They were terrifying, organized, and mysterious. And the G-Man somehow became even more unsettling than before. But with every answer came 10 new questions. Who were the Combine? Where did they come from? Why was the G-Man obsessed with Gordon Freeman? And why would Gordon never speak? Fans debated endlessly, and Valve, they fed the fire. They promised no more 6-year wait. Instead, they introduced episodic releases. Episode 1 dropped in 2006. It was shorter but sharp. Episode 2 followed in 2007, building on Alyx's relationship with the player and ending with one of the most brutal cliffhangers in gaming. And then, silence. No Episode 3, no Half-Life 3, nothing. At first, fans believed Valve was secretly building something massive, a finale, a new engine, a payoff worthy of the wait, but Valve had moved on. Steam exploded into the dominant PC platform. Counter-Strike took over esports, Team Fortress 2 discovered microtransactions, and accidentally invented a billion-dollar economy. Valve was too busy printing money to finish Gordon Freeman's story, and that silence transformed Half-Life into legend. The absence of Half-Life became the biggest meme in gaming. Half-Life 3 confirmed was not just a joke. It started to become a culture. Fans tore through files, code, graffiti, even Gabe Newell interviews, searching for clues. Even if he blinked twice, was it a signal? If he said 3, was it a hint? It became the greatest unsolved mystery in gaming. But behind the memes, the fire burned. People were not just waiting for another sequel. They were waiting for the sequel. The impossible one. Half-Life 2 ended on a cliffhanger, but what truly haunted players was not the ending. It was the silence that followed. And that silence became gaming's loudest sound. Episode 2 ended with one of the harshest cliffhangers in gaming. Fans were certain that Episode 3 would follow quickly. Interviews, blogs, casual hints, it all pointed to closure coming soon. But then the years started piling up. 2008, nothing. 2009, nothing. 2010, still nothing. People stayed kinda calm. At first, Valve was busy. Steam was exploding into a global platform. Left 4 Dead was dominating co-op gaming, Team Fortress 2 had transformed into the first real free-to-play cosmetic economy, and Dota 2 was rewriting esports. Surely, Half-Life was just waiting in the wings. By 2011, patience was gone. Desperation took over. Half-Life 3 confirmed became the internet's favorite conspiracy theory. You could not scroll YouTube, Reddit, or even walk down certain streets without seeing it sprayed as graffiti. Entire communities formed around scraps of fake evidence. If Valve released any game with the number 3 in it, fans swore it was a countdown. If Gabe Newell were a triangle, people would treat it like a coded message. And at one point, people were convinced his watch hand position was a hint. It was madness, but it was fun. It snowballed into the biggest running joke gaming had ever seen. Nobody knew anymore if Valve was trolling or if Half-Life really was stuck in eternal development hell. But the silence only made the obsession louder. And here is the paradox. The silence did not kill Half-Life. It immortalized it. Most franchises go off to ruin themselves with bad sequels, but Half-Life skipped that fate completely. By releasing nothing, Valve turned Half-Life 3 into a mythical artifact. Schrodinger's game, both the greatest sequel ever imagined and a void that did not exist. Until Valve broke the silence. It could be anything fans wanted it to be. The community refused to let go. Introducing Black Mesa. A fan-made remake of the original became one of the most ambitious passion projects in gaming. Gary's mod turned Source into a playground where Gordon Freeman could fly into orbit, as well as G-Man dancing in a nightclub, or even 50 NPCs could just spawn into a deathmatch with a toaster. Fans kept the series alive even when Valve would not. And Valve, they leaned into it. Gabe Newell could not go anywhere without being asked about Half-Life 3. Sometimes he dodged, sometimes he smirked, and sometimes he joked. But every time, the legend grew stronger. Fans started treating him less like a CEO and more like a cryptid that might one day reveal the truth. Behind the memes though, fans began to realize the truth. Valve was not just busy, they were scared. Half-Life 3 had become too big to exist. Any release risked disappointment. A good game might not be good enough. Even a masterpiece could collapse under the weight of an expansion. So Valve did one thing they always excelled at: nothing. The silence became their strategy. By 2015, the meme had outgrown the series. Half-Life 3 Confirmed was a phrase everyone knew, even people who never touched the games. It was the ultimate metaphor for the impossible, the white whale of gaming. Half-Life was no longer just a video game, it had become legend. By the middle of the 2010s, Half-Life was no longer just a video game. It was a ghost story, a whisper, as well as a running joke whenever the number 3 appeared anywhere. By this time, most fans had given up. If Episode 3 had ever been real, it felt buried under mountains of Steam sales, Counter-Strike skins, and Dota cosmetics. And then came the curveball. In 2019, out of nowhere, Valve broke the silence. A new Half-Life game, but it was not Half-Life 3, not even Episode 3. It was Half-Life Alyx, a pre-sequel set between the first two games. And here was the twist. It was VR only. The reaction was just chaos, honestly. A VR exclusive is insane. After more than a decade of waiting for closure, fans were told that the only way forward was strapping a headset onto their face. Some were very furious, others were kinda skeptical. But then Alyx launched in 2020 and everything changed. Because Alyx was not just good, it was honestly groundbreaking. Valve once again used Half-Life the way they always had, as a glimpse of the future. They did it in 1998, they did it in 2004, and in 2020, they did it again. This time, the future was virtual reality. Alyx was not a tech demo. It was the first VR game that truly felt like a full AAA experience. You were not just pressing keys. You were reloading weapons by hand. You were pulling drawers open for ammo. You were ducking behind cover while Combine soldiers shouted and fired at you. Every motion felt natural, immersive, and alive. For the first time, VR looked like more than a novelty. And here is when the shock hit. Alyx did not just bring Half-Life back, it advanced the story. Hidden inside the game was an ending that reframed everything and set the stage for what could only be described as Half-Life 3's setup. Valve had done the impossible. They gave fans closure while cracking the door open wider than ever. For the first time in more than 10 years, Half-Life 3 Confirmed stopped being a meme and started to feel like a possibility. But Alyx also revealed something deeper. Valve had not forgotten Half-Life. They had not abandoned it. They were waiting for the right moment, the right technology, and maybe even the right excuse. When they returned, they did it the only way Valve could. Not with the sequel everyone demanded, but with something nobody expected. A VR masterpiece that reminded the world why Half-Life was never just a game. It was a phenomenon. So, where does that leave us today? Alyx ended on one of the boldest teases in gaming history. It closed some doors, opened new ones, and gave fans their first real hope in over a decade. But here is the reality. Valve moves on its own schedule. Their clock ticks in decades, not years. Since 2020, the community has gone into full detective mode. Fans data mine every file, and they dissect every developer interview. Literally, a single line of unused code becomes evidence. And a throwaway comment from Gabe Newell sparks wild theories. And yet, Valve has never promised it, never even teased it directly. What Alyx offered was not confirmation, it was permission. Permission to dream again. That is the essence of Half-Life. A story built on silence, mystery, and unanswered questions. Gordon Freeman never speaks. The G-Man never explains. Valve never provides closure. They make you wait. They make you speculate. And somehow, the waiting becomes part of the story itself. Because Half-Life has never really been about crowbars, headcrabs, or physics puzzles. It has always been about trust. The trust that one day Valve might finally return to finish the fight. Until that day comes, the myth of Half-Life 3 keeps the series more alive than any sequel ever could. In the end, Half-Life is not just a franchise. It is gaming's greatest cliffhanger. So is Half-Life 3 confirmed? Not by Valve, but by us. By the millions of players who refuse to let the story die. And maybe, just maybe, that is the perfect ending. So, what is Half-Life, really? It is not just a game about a scientist with a crowbar fighting aliens. It is the story of how one company reshaped the future of gaming and then vanished for more than a decade and somehow turned that silence into something more powerful than games themselves. That is the strange genius of Half-Life. If Valve had released Half-Life 3 back in 2008, it would have been huge, but it also would have been final. Instead, by never finishing the story, Valve created something larger than any single release. They created a living myth, a cliffhanger so permanent that every gamer on Earth knows it, even if they had never played a single level. And maybe that was the smartest move of all. Half-Life 3 Confirmed is no longer just a joke. It is gaming's longest running prophecy, a meme, a ritual, a legend that refuses to die because deep down every fan still believes that one day it will arrive. Half-Life is a prophecy. Half-Life is a religion. Half-Life is a meme. It is the rare franchise that proves sometimes not releasing a sequel can make a series more legendary than releasing one ever could. And thank you for watching.